the first point I would like to touch upon is the concept of value creation and value capturing. Now, innovation is very important for the capturing of value, but also for the creation of value. And value, we have to make a distinction between both concepts. Value creation is part of the strategy, and that's a theoretical concept. Value creation is practice. Value capturing, sorry, is practice. Is implementation. Now, organizations struggle with strategy implementation, especially large companies. They are very good at execution, large companies, but they struggle, they are slow on change and innovation. That is why, for instance, Procter & Gamble is innovating its innovation process. That's an interesting thing to see. And that, in the world we live in today, it's about agility, it's about rapid innovation, and it's about fast learning. The three go hand in hand, and experimentation goes with it. That is why large companies are now seeking collaboration with SMEs, with agile and lean startups, because we will see cases of that later on. Indeed, we will also have, for instance, Philip Morris. It's the second case I will touch upon. They say we borrow from the SME world. Now, that's the first point I wanted to touch upon. The second point I want to touch upon is about the customer. Leadership teams and organizations should put the customer at the core, at the heart of their strategy. They should be discussing 80% of their time in the boardroom about the customer and customer-related topics, opportunities, challenges, not at the operational level, but rather at the strategic level. And a nice example is the Decathlon example. Céline spoke about moving from a process-centric approach to a more customer, user-centric approach. She talked about the importance of the why, the customer point of view, before the what is the product itself. So that is very important. That brings me to the third point I want to touch upon briefly. And these are four simultaneous revolutions that are taking place as we speak. The first one is a data revolution. The second one is a technological revolution. And we all know about that. All of the pitches talk about digitalization. But there's a third and a fourth very important revolution. The third revolution is what I call a sociological revolution, and we call that the peer-to-peer revolution. That is a horizontal movement where co-creation and collaboration is extremely important. Procter & Gamble, and we will talk about that later, talks about a collaborative ecosystem. So that collaboration with government, with the legislation, with other companies, even with competitors, is extremely important. And the last revolution that is taking place as we speak is what we call the design revolution. Now, design revolution does not only refer to new products and new services, it also talks about designing the whole customer journey. Now, the customer journey entails seeing things from the point of view of the other, meaning that I have to understand what the customer wants, what he or she is going through. And seeing things from the point of view of the other means empathy. Now, organizations are very, very bad at empathic capabilities. And Decathlon gave a nice example, because they said, we don't talk about air permeability anymore. We speak about this jacket is windproof. So they take the perspective of the customer. Now, experts in organizations have a lot of issues with seeing things from the perspective of the other, because they are experts. They look at it from their perspective. And what do we have most in organizations? It's experts. Now, that brings me to the fourth element, and that is Organizations need to get their house in order. And later on, DHL will talk about operational excellence. DHL will talk about, that's the rational side. DHL will speak about employee engagement. That's the relational side. Decathlon spoke about the horizontal collaboration between the engineering, marketing, and design department. And PMI will speak later on about new capabilities, a customer service, for instance, which they need. So organizations see things from a theoretical point of view, the strategy, and they need to move to implementation, a strategy implementation plan. That's not the same as a business plan. And moving from theory to practice, you need change in behavior. Now, change in behavior, as I explained earlier on, is very difficult because it hurts. If you don't feel the physical or mental pain, you're not changing your behavior. And in order to facilitate organizations with that, we need to help them. And that is, we need strong leadership. And what I'm missing a little bit in all 6 of the pitches is the discussion about the role of leadership in all of that. And finally, that brings me to my last point in my first intervention, if I may. And that is, in order to get your house in order, you need to look at the holistic picture. The holistic picture means that you have to see and strategy implementation and culture transformation and leadership and learning, seeing that together, not a salami approach. Secondly, we need to make a difference between change and transformation. Change is a better strategy, a better structure, better processes, better systems. That's the rational side. That's what we do every day. But transformation refers to the culture of an organization. And cultures means the sum of the individual behavior of people in an organization. And finally, it's all about learning. Learning is key for innovation. If you do not, people have a passion for learning. And so the question is, how can we ignite that passion for learning, Wim? The next point is what Pierre just spoke about, is his 3 pillars of transformation, product, internal and external. I think I'd like to take it a level higher and talk about the 3 key strategies which are necessary for innovation, for successful innovation. That is a business strategy, that is leadership strategy, and that is a engagement strategy. These are 3 different explicit strategy. Now, the business strategy is all about your customer, it's about innovation, it's about digitalization, and it's about changing your culture. The leadership strategy, and again, this is very important. I come back because it has not been touched upon sufficiently within the 6 pages. It's been there implicitly, but not explicitly. So we need courageous and decisive leadership for innovation to work. That means speaking with one voice, walking the talk. These are just 2 examples. And finally, we need an engagement strategy. That means that we have to take everybody in the organization, all the employees with us on the journey towards our preferred future, which is for PMI, the new business model. The next point, that engagement strategy brings me to the next point, which is, I spoke earlier about that 80% of the time should be about the customer. I think part of that 80% should be about employees in the organization. And there are 3 people objectives which can help with innovation. The first one is anti-fragility. In these COVID times, hospitals, schools, small businesses, restaurants, pubs struggle. They were not prepared for that disruption. So these organizations are very fragile. What we need to do is help organizations and help people within organizations to be far more anti-fragile. A second people objective is within the realm of sustainable growth. Sustainable growth has 3 elements. The first element we touched upon, it's profit, it's value creation, it's value capturing, it's turnover. That's one pillar. Second pillar, we talk about it with ArcelorMittal, for instance, is the environment, reduction of CO2, the climate. But people forget that in order to achieve sustainable growth, we need a third pillar, and that's a people pillar. And that's giving people in the organization purpose, hope, and opportunities to learn professionally and privately. And the third people objective is creating commitment for results. Leaders should create commitment in their organizations for the results you want to achieve. That is, again, that horizontal movement, that peer-to-peer movement, that co-creation and that collaboration. That brings me to the next point, and that is, what do we mean by innovation? And that's a point I am not going to touch upon because we don't have time, but the 6 pitches have inspired me to draw a little bit a innovation framework. And if people are interested in discussing or seeing that innovation framework, they can always contact me afterwards. That brings me to the point of structure and behavior economics. Innovation implies a change in behavior. A change in behavior with your customers, but also with the people in your own organization. And there are 2 things which play a role, and that's structure, and that's what you spoke about, Pierre, is the structure of your organization. Structure is never a goal in itself, but it can be a means to an end to help the people change their behavior. And that is what you did with the new business model. A second element is behavior economics. You had to discuss a lot with the legal people, with the government, in order to make your innovation possible, Pierre. And that is where nudging comes in. How do I bring a message that is acceptable for the people who want to buy the product and for the government, for instance? And also, when we had the Decathlon case, the lady, Celine, she spoke about being more human-centric. And that means that we have to understand human biases. Human behavior is not rational. We are full of human biases, and that is important to understand these human biases. Now, the last point then is that I'd like to refer a little bit to innovation killers. And a first very important point is, if you're not capable to innovate your own organization, you will never be able to innovate. That's a very important first point. A second point that is very important is, and I touched upon it, is we need you have to get your house in order. You have to break through the silos, the departments. Again, it's an example that has been given, is with Decathlon. They work together, the engineering department, the design department, the operations department. A third killer of innovation is that people use training as a change strategy, and I want to be very clear. Training as a change strategy does not work. A fourth element, which is very important, is that everybody in the organization, and I mean literally everybody, has to understand what it means consumer experience, the customer experience and the customer convenience as part of the customer journey. If people don't understand that, how can you help this innovation to thrive and to work outside? Another innovation killer is if you have a culture in your organization of giving presentations. People who move from one room to the other to give presentations to each other. Well, if you have a culture like that, the chances are that you will not be able to innovate. Another one is, you have organizations where they say, for every problem we have a solution. That's great. But you also have cultures which say, for every problem we find, or for every solution, we find another problem. Well, if you have that culture, it's not going to work either. And another one is people measure, and measuring is knowing, and that's very important. But it's not because you know the measures of it that people are going to change their behavior. COVID is a nice example. We see the measures every day, the numbers on television, but we don't change our behavior. And finally, your innovation process is very important. If you have a heavy legacy of your innovation process, it's going to be very difficult. So you have to innovate your innovation process, as Procter & Gamble will suggest later on, Wim. These are the 10 innovation killers, or 8 innovation killers.
And thank you very much for that.